I'm with Detective Ed Bird, who ended up as a detective inspector in the great BSAP, and he ended up in Special Branch. Ed, I tell you, just from what you sent me, we're going to need lots of time to cover your exploits. It's a hell of a story. But thanks for your time, Ed. And let's just start with just where you were born and where you went to school, and just those early days. And then I want to chat to you about the riots as a kid.
All right, Hannes, I was born as a direct result of the Second World War. My old man had arrived in Rhodesia in the early 1930s. And at the outbreak of war, he signed on and he went to the Royal Air Force. They initially were all based at the showgrounds in Bulawayo and had a march around with broomsticks and in civvies. And eventually they were, after a couple of months, issued with uniforms. That's what he told me. And then he went to the UK with 4-4 Rhodesia Squadron, Royal Air Force.
Was that 237 Squadron, the fighter squadron, or the bomber squadron?
4-4.
Oh, 4-4, the bomber squadron.
The bomber squadron, yeah.
You know, Ed, I found out something about that squadron the other day. Just the other day, I didn't know. But 4-4 Squadron was the first squadron in the Royal Air Force to get the Lancaster bombers. Did you know that?
That's right. That's what he told me, because when he first arrived, they were on Sterlings, I think.
Yes.
Sterling bombers, and then when they Avro Lancaster came out, he was posted onto the Lancasters, and he told me they were the first.
Ed, I'm going to interrupt you again, because there's something very interesting about 4-4 Squadron. They then became, much later, in the 70s or 80s, I think they then got the Vulcan bomber, which was the Royal Air Force long-range bomber, and that squadron was actually earmarked to bomb Rhodesia after
Honestly,
UDI.
I thought it would have been disbanded because it had Rhodesia, 4-4, and then brackets Rhodesia Squadron, Royal Air Force.
Yes,
So,
that's absolutely right. On the squadron emblem, it is Rhodesia Squadron, and those aeroplanes were tasked, if they'd been given the go ahead, to bomb their homeland, basically.
But you see, one of the commanders was, I think, Wing Commander Nettleton. He was a squadron commander, and he went on to win the VC, and he was later killed.
That's right.
And
Nettleton from Rhodesia.
He was from Rhodesia, yeah.
Mm. So those are the thanks you get for fighting for king and country.
Yeah. So the squadron, the bombers were posted all over the UK. And my old man landed up in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And he met my mother. And they got married. And just after the war, I was born. So the war was now finished. My old man had come back to Rhodesia to get organized, to wait for my mother and my elder sister and myself to arrive.
And you were in Bulawayo?
Yeah, Bulawayo, yeah.
Okay, and what was your dad doing after the war?
I'm not too sure what he was doing before the war. I think he was trying his hand at a lot of different, well, not jobs, but I know he went prospecting, and he had shares in a mine in the Gwanda area. But anyway, when he came back, he got a job with the roads department on the mechanical side. So he was in charge of the road moving equipment. And all the roads were being rebuilt because most of them were strip roads. The road to the Falls and the road to Salisbury.
Yes.
And I can remember we didn't have a permanent house then. Wherever the work went, just so they were working on the Falls Road, and they were working near, say, the Amguza River. You would set up a camp there, throw a slab of concrete, and then put up a tin shed, something like a squatter's camp. And then and the kitchen, but it was. I remember that, and then he bought a farm just outside Bulawayo, and there was nothing on the farm. So I can remember going out, and he was supervising the building of the house, which eventually was a lovely house. And I can remember sinking the well. I must have been about 5. It was an open well. It wasn't a borehole as such. They went down, they found water at 30 foot. The diviner with his sticks, they said, there's water down there. Anyway, we had plenty of water. The only thing was, there was no pump or windmill to drive the water. So you'd have to let a bucket down and then wind the bucket up and then fill another bucket, etc. So it was a bit primitive. But I enjoyed that life, and there was game on the farm.
Where was the farm exactly? Ed?
If you go on the Falls, not the Falls Road, on the Salisbury Road.
Yeah, how far out of town?
About 30 k's.
Okay.
Outside of Bulawayo.
Going towards Shangani.
Yeah.
On the left or the right side of the road?
On the right hand side. Yeah. And
okay, so you were on the farm, and then Ed, where did you go to school?
And then my old man, after several droughts, we started homeschooling, because for the first 2 years you could do homeschooling. Then it was compulsory to go to school. Now, in those years, because of drought, and I can remember one fire that burnt the farm flat. So the old man was forced down. We were penniless, forced to sell up, and we moved to Bulawayo. Now we moved to, I think, the roughest suburb in the whole of Zimbabwe, or Rhodesia, which was Queen's Park East. It was a very rough area, and the houses had been built by the Rhodesian government to house immigrants cheaply, because they were expecting thousands after the war.
Yeah.
Anyway, I started school at Thomas Rutland School.
Which one?
Thomas Rutland.
Okay.
Started school there, and I was there for about 4 years, and we eventually moved into Bulawayo, into Main Street, Bulawayo, opposite the Warmbler Mansions, the famous Warmbler Mansions. Anyway, then I went to Baines Junior School, and I did all right there. I wasn't the brightest spark, but I was holding my own. I enjoyed sport, but I can remember the 1 year all sporting activity was stopped because of the polio pandemic.
Right.
Sweeping through the world, and it was before the vaccine had been developed. So all sporting activity was stopped. At breaks, you weren't allowed to run around. You had to go and sit in the shade, eat your sandwiches, go back to class. I think it must have been about 1954, something like that. I'd like just to mention, I think I got the name right. I was a keen swimmer, and I was in the my colour was Smuts. I was in Smuts' house, which was blue. And one of the girls, I think she was a year senior to me, her name was Dorothy Sutcliffe, and she was an outstanding swimmer. And then in the 1960 Olympics, she qualified to go to the Olympic Games. So
Wow.
she could have only been about 14. But anyway, that was besides. And our swimming galas used to take place at the Drill Hall swimming pool. And we used to go swimming there a lot because my aunt, who had no children, she worked for the NFIB, the Native Foreigners Identification Bureau, CID. And through her, we got membership. We spent a lot of time at the drill hall at that swimming pool during school holidays, over weekends, etc. After I left Bain School, I was zoned for Milton. I went to Milton the first day with my uniform, and there were hundreds of new boys. And they were a bit disorganized. So it was placements now. They were placing you in your various classes according to your academic reports. By the second day, I hadn't been placed in a class. So my mother, she, I think she was worried I was going to go to the gardening class, you see. So they only had a school that only had one class was Christian Brothers College. So she enrolled me there. Although we were Protestants, with a Catholic school, she believed in the strict discipline as well. So then I went to Christian Brothers.
Okay.
Now,
Ed, I'm going to jump in here. 1959, 60, your first indication that there might be trouble on the way, there are riots in Bulawayo. Just talk us through that.
Right, Hannes, from what I can remember, when we went swimming to the drill hall, the police reserve was a field next to the swimming pool, and they were practicing riot drill virtually every weekend and using tear gas. And the tear gas would come to the swimming pool. Everyone would start crying, but this went on for a long time because I think they were expecting trouble. Well, they must have been. And then the riots broke out in the location. And
this would have been the days of Joshua and
this would
Nkomo.
have been
This was probably Nkomo sort of rise to power.
Yeah, this was 1959. I can remember that the one bad riot, it lasted for 3 days, and it was miles away, but it was this distant hum, and it went on day and night. And there was explosions, there was smoke, there was fires. I tried to see, I went up to the top of Warmborough Mansions. You couldn't see much, but you could just hear the noise. And then my aunt lived in a Warmborough Mansions, and her flat overlooked 4th Avenue and 4th Street, which was just off Main Street. And at about 8 o'clock the one evening, a military vehicle pitched up, and I can remember four territorial soldiers with Bren guns set up their positions on the road facing the location. Then later I heard that the police were losing control in the township and that there was likely to be a breakout. And the masses would storm into Bulawayo, slaughter the whites, burn down, cause mayhem. It would have been the second revolution. It wasn't a consensus of opinion with the blacks. There was a lot of intimidation. If you didn't go out, you'd either get killed or beaten or your house would be burned. So they were forcing the majority of the peace-loving people to go and riot.
Ed, so this gets your attention. When do you what makes you decide to go to the police, to join the police?
Then, when I was a kid, in 1954, there was a royal visit to Bulawayo.
Yeah.
I think it was either Princess Margaret or
Yes.
Queen Mother, or
Yeah, that's right.
so we were all given little sticks with Union Jacks on, all the school kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we had to go and line the streets or Main Street, Bulawayo, where the parade would pass through, the motorcade. And I saw these
Policeman.
mounted policemen. They would form the escort. And I wasn't interested in seeing any royalty. I was just interested in
Horses.
the cavalry. And I think that, together with hanging around the drill hall, I think I decided then. So I was a youngster.
So when did you go and enlist, Ed?
Well, now there's another story. Because of the riots, and my mother had gone through a terrible time during the bombing of Belfast during the war. She didn't want to go through another war. So she said, we're all going to move to Cape Town. You couldn't get any further past. So none of us wanted to go, including my father. But my father went along, and eventually, in about 59, he bought a house in Fishhook in the Cape. I think I was 14 at the end of that year. We moved down to the Cape. Now, my father, he had about a year to do or something until early retirement. In fact, my sister was in Cambridge. So we decided not to interrupt her education by changing now to the South African education system and to let her write her Cambridge exam. So she became a boarder, and my old man stayed in Rhodesia and came down periodically on leave.
Okay. So when do you go to the police, Ed? You're gonna have to speed it up.
In 1964, I tested, but at the beginning I was working. I started work the year before, with the intention of when I was 18, I was going to join the police and go back to Rhodesia. My mother was dead against it. I said no, and eventually my dad, he signed the consent forms, and I was accepted to go to the interview. So caught the train, arrived in Salisbury.
Went to Morris Depot.
It wasn't Morris Depot or Tomlinson Depot. It was just Depot. Tomlinson Depot was the APTS, African Police Training School. I went to the interview on the Monday morning. Very, very, very daunting, because you face three, you think gods, really, and they asked you all these questions. And one was an inspector, and one was a superintendent, and I think the chairman of the board was a chief superintendent. So they weren't really high-ranking officers. But to me, they were generals. So after the interview, prior to that, I'd had my medical, etc., and it was just the interview. The following day, they told me that I was accepted and to report to PGHQ.
Ed, how long was your training course?
6 months.
And you got busy. You did a lot of work with horses.
Yeah. No, that was. We went to this display squad, but equitation was a major part of the police training. I would say equitation.
Who was on your course with you, Ed? Was Winston with you?
No one really famous. Tony Scott Roger. He was executed, but early in about 1971.
Okay. Winston Hart, was he with you?
No, he was a lot senior to me. Yeah, he was long before me. He was about 5 years.
So Ed, when did you pass out, and what was your first posting?
It was to Bandura.
What year was that?
This was beginning of 1963. I passed out in December of 64, and then went to driving school. From driving school, I was posted to Bandura.
Okay.
And I didn't really know what was going on because the police, law police instruction wasn't high on their agenda. As much time teaching us law and police as they did typing. The rest was equitation, PT, and foot drill. And the foot drill, we were brought up to the guard standard because our instructors had been to, because now this is prior to UDI, had been all trained by the British in their
very high standard of drill.
Yeah, but this was in the UK. And the same with the equitation instructors. They all had to undergo training with the household cavalry.
Wow.
And funny, I watched a program on TV about the household cavalry and their police training. Not police training, their horse training, their equitation on as recruits. And it was exactly the same as the instructions. And the instructors emulated their commands as well,
Interesting.
I couldn't really understand what they were saying, some of them, but they had this funny way, and it was the same 60 years later in the training for the household cavalry. So nothing's changed.
They were very, very smart. That's for sure. The BSAP mounted police. Ed, let's just go on now I want to move along. Your deployment before UDI, when the politicians were trying to canvass opinion amongst the African chiefs. Just tell us about your involvement there.
No, that's when I was in depot, and it must have been October of 64. Our squad was told that on the Saturday night, or the Sunday night, we were all going to Bulawayo, and we'd have an early dinner, and at 7 o'clock we'd all fall in. So 7 o'clock, we were put on a troop carrier and taken to the Salisbury railway station. And we didn't know what we were going to Bulawayo for. We were told to take our overcoats and a change of casual civilian clobber. So we boarded the train. It was a mail train, and but we were youngsters.
Yeah.
I can remember there was a party of women that had been at a bowls competition in Salisbury, and they're all going back to Bulawayo. But they'd been partying, so they wanted to carry on the party. And I saw all these young blokes. They invited us to the dining carriage or the bar area. but we didn't go because none of us had any money. I think maybe a couple of the instructors went along, and none of us bought any bedding. I remember it was cold, but we had our trench coats. We put the bunks down, but it was that the plastic covers. You couldn't sleep because it was so uncomfortable. Anyway, I thought, on the way back, I'm buying bedding. We're going to hire bedding. I got to the a troop carrier took us to the police camp, where we had a good breakfast. And then our instructors, who were in charge of us, said we could have the day off until 2 o'clock that afternoon, and we were to be back in uniform, ready to move. We got back, and we were issued with some 10 rounds of ammunition. Now, the ammunition we had to put into our pockets of our trench coats.
And what sort of rifle?
A Greener shotgun.
And now your task is to go off with
And
the
then they
politicians.
briefed us. They said, you are going now to escort the chiefs, the Matabeleland chiefs from all over Matabeleland back to Salisbury.
Back to Salisbury to talk to the politicians about the possibility of UDI.
Well, that's what transpired, but they never told us at the time. They said, and they used the old rail carts, the old carriages, where they had the veranda. And we were positioned in the veranda, two tour veranda. So four policemen guarding one carriage. We weren't allowed to go anywhere near the chiefs. We weren't allowed to talk to them. And we carried on. We arrived in Salisbury. Well, not Salisbury itself. A siding just outside Salisbury, and there was buses waiting. So the chiefs were put on the bus. We were put on the bus, and we went to a place that we were told was called Dombashawa.
Right.
And the Dombashawa is a beautiful big hill, and there was a mission station. And
so there they now await the politicians, do they? And they have some sort of a conference.
Our job was just to guard the perimeter at night. I believe the RLI were in ambushes around a large perimeter.
And so the politicians came. Did this involve Ian Smith? Was he one of the people that came to meet the chiefs?
Absolutely. Initially, it was the senior district commissioners and the Secretary of Internal Affairs who prepared them, and then Ian Smith came and spent the day discussing the UDI story. Now, this is October 1964, so they were planning their declaration even then.
Yeah.
They needed the support of the chiefs.
Yeah.
Eventually, the chiefs were all on side, and they agreed with
Ian Smith.
Ian Smith and the government. So there wasn't a problem there. We then went back to depot. We didn't have to escort them back to Bulawayo. They put them on buses. Anyway, we carried on training for 2 weeks when I was also in training. There was riots in Highfields, and our squad was deployed for 2 weeks into the Highfields location on riot drill. Not on riot duties, but we were really kept as reserve. The riots were quelled, people arrested, and I remember escorting a busload, you can say dissidents, to a place called Goromonzi, which I'd never heard of before.
Yeah, detention center.
Yeah, but
Mugabe might
I don't know
actually.
whether they hold, because it was busloads that went there. And I can remember overhearing an interrogation of some of the ringleaders of the, and I thought, hey, this is a good job. And I heard it was the law and order section of the BSAP. And they were involved in riots all the time. In any trouble, it was their job to sort out the mess. Anyway, that's stuck in the back of my mind.
Ed, you then take off on your matchless. At what point is this?
Okay, now I'll get to Bandura. It's still the old rank. We were still constables and sergeants and first sergeants, etc. And the station then consisted of one chief inspector, a crown sergeant, and a second sergeant, and four, we'll say, troops, because they used to call us troops. Our area also consisted of the Masada and Masabura TTLs, as well as a big farming area, the big Bandura Matepa Tepa area of farming. Horses had been replaced by motorbikes at that stage, but patrols were exactly the same.
So you on your matchless with a constable or on your own, and you just have to patrol the district.
And there was two constables. One had a bicycle, and one was my pillion passenger. So if I had to go and arrest an accused, I would arrest the accused, and the constable with the bicycle, when I left, he left as well. So he'd have to cycle to the scene, take charge of the handcuffed accused, and then he was taken back. He had to walk back to the patrol base. I can remember on one occasion I went out with a young African constable. We got to a call to arrest. It was a warrant to arrest out for one of the occupants. So while I was arresting him, I just felt this, hey, well, I just saw stars and pain. Now I was being attacked by the accused parents. The one who was doing all the damage, he only had one leg, but he had two crutches, and he was using the one crutch to knock shit out of me. And any little wound on the head caused a lot of blood, you see. So we managed to subdue him, and then his wife, she got hold of a crutch. So we subdued her as well and took the crutches away. So they couldn't move now anyway. When the constable with the bicycle pitched up, I was covered in blood. My shirt was covered in blood. The back, but it was virtually superficial. Little eggs over my head and some cuts. When the constable saw me, he thought I was dead. He sped back to the patrol base to radio for help. They sent out a patrol, a mobile patrol, armed mobile patrol, to rescue me. By that stage, I'd washed up and I cleaned up. There was some blood on my shirt, and the two Land Rovers pitch up, and everyone jumps out. Some of the greener shotguns, others with the riot buttons, and I want to know what's going on. They said, no, we've come to save your life. I said, what happened there? When the constable and the bicycle arrived, he saw me, thought I was dying, rode back in record time and reported in a panic. The memory charge at Bandura. For some reason, he took an instant dislike to me. And he made my life hell for a year while I was there. And I was always in trouble. And it wasn't my fault. Can I tell you one story? On the 11th of November, 1965, at Stable Parade, we used to do Stable Parade in the morning. Instead of grooming horses, you would clean motorbikes. As the Stable Parade, he said to me that I was to leave for Salisbury at 8 o'clock and pick up urgent dispatches and to be back at the station at 11 o'clock.
So this is the day of UDI.
The day of UDI.
Yeah, okay.
So I went and I was getting the BSA 650 motorbike ready to use that. And despite me, he said, no, you use the matchless, you see. So use the matchless. Now the matchless, it was a scrambler. The blokes used to put this 500 through its paces, and it was a bitch of a vehicle. You could break your ankle with the starting it with the compression. So you had to decompress it. But anyway, I got through to Mashonaland Province headquarters, reported to the OSC province. He handed me an envelope, and he said, "You'll find this very interesting when it's revealed." Now this was about 9:30. So at 9:30, I got my bike and I was on my way straight back to Bandura, as instructed. In the 2nd Street extension, I think it was near the Royal Salisbury Golf Course, the motorbike broke down. They were stuck on the side of the road with a broken motorbike. I had to wait about 2 hours until a police vehicle passed, and I got their attention, and they came and helped me. Now, time is getting on. Well, to cut a long story short, when the vehicle went to private dealership for repairs, UDI had already been declared. So that was at lunchtime, I think.
That was UDI. So that was UDI. Ed, I'm gonna have to end for now. We'll have to carry on some other time. I've got to go. But thanks. I'm going to send this off to John, and then can we make another plan to carry on?